I'm your host, JK, and I want to welcome you to a guest episode for Help Me Understand. It's been a couple of weeks, I want to say, since we've had a guest on the podcast. So today I am welcoming fellow coach and friend, Coach Anita Fehr. So before introducing Anita, I always like to take just a quick moment to express gratitude to anybody who is listening. You have a lot of different options to listen to for podcasts and all sorts of other things these days. So I truly, truly never take it for granted that you chose to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. So without further delay, let's introduce Anita, or introduce you all to Anita for those of you who may not be familiar with her. So first and foremost, actually, Anita, how are you? Like, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm super excited to be here. I love the things we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, super pumped for it.
Yeah, we're going to get into, well, we know for sure that we're going to talk about things that are going to be, the term that I've started using is fitness and nutrition adjacent. And then as far as any specifics, we'll just kind of see. We're gonna roll like many of the conversations on Help Me Understand go. It's more of a conversation versus like an interview style. And yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. So Anita, for those who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
I am Anita Fehr. I live in Canada, in central Canada, in Manitoba. I am in the women's health coaching space. All of it is online, primarily one-on-one coaching, and been been here for I've kind of lost track of the years. They've kind of rolled into each other over the past five or so. Initially, did start very self-taught from the beginning, and then moved into receiving some certifications, working out of uh, physical building, working, training clients one-on-one in a gym, and then honestly just really loved the transition into the online space. I just felt I could help more women achieve their goals, and then while also integrating nutrition with exercise, as opposed to just here's your three workouts, running through proper form and movement and that sort of thing. So it's been a real progression, and it's just a space that I love to be in because of the reach that you have, especially now with it all being online and in this space.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's what I do.
Perfect. All right. So that gets the initial, okay, here's who I am and what I do. And for those who are not familiar with how I roll on this particular podcast, I'm all about peeling back layers and getting context to particular things. And one of the most common quotes that I will requote or repost or however you phrase it these days, but one of the most common things that I bring up is a quote from Inky Johnson that says, "One of the biggest mistakes that people make is assuming that where you meet someone is where they've always been." Now, I pretty much paraphrase that. And also, you get the general gist. And that's a big foundation of the conversations that I like to have. So, in the spirit of knowing that there is more than meets the eye, can you talk to me about a early experience? And when I say early, you can just translate that however you want. An early experience that you had prior to coaching that you believe impacts something that a way that you coach now, or something that you believe when it comes to how you handle coaching now. So any sort of an early experience that you believe is directly linked to something that has to do with your coaching currently.
That's a great question, and it can take me to a few different places.
Yeah, pick
Before I
any of them. Any of them.
before interested in, I'll just say, fitness, I remember really, really clearly a time. It was 2008, and I was with a friend who was working in a gym facility, and That didn't impact me as far as, oh, you go to the gym, so I'm going to go to the gym. And we weren't gym friends, we were just friends. And we were on a vacation together, and I loved her energy. I loved that, to me, she was this pinnacle of fitness. And I just thought, I can do better.
Mm.
My youngest child was 3 years old, and I just, I remember how I felt in my skin. And so for me, it was a matter of, I could do better. I want to be able to climb that pyramid in Mexico. I want to, without like huffing and puffing and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And
Yeah.
for me, that was a moment of, I know that that was the time when I stepped foot into the gym when we returned from that trip. So to me, that was just a
Mm.
personal thing that, so I believe that that brings to me when I see other women struggling, right? Because I was at that place. And your quote is perfect because so many people that have, I'll just say, landed on, my Instagram page now, or that I meet wherever, they have this perception that it's always been easy for me.
Mm.
They have this perception that there's never been the struggle. It's like, well, yeah, you work out, but you love it. Like I get these comments, and so they speak to me because it brings me back to the time in 2008 when it wasn't easy, and it was a hard decision of showing up, of not having a clue, of total blind faith that this gym would possibly transform me into, that person that my friend was, or loosely speaking.
Yeah. Okay. See, there's always more than meets the eye. So for frame of reference too, because I know this information, however, somebody else listening may not know. Uh, at that time, how old are you at that time when you said '08, right? So let's do some math here. So
It
17 years
was
ago, would that be 16,
so
17 years ago?
it was like I was early 30s.
Okay. So early 30s.
Yeah.
And at that time, you said that your oldest was three. No, your youngest was
No,
three.
my youngest. I
Yeah.
have three children,
Yep.
and youngest was three,
Okay.
and she was born in 2005, so this was 2000.
Okay. And to bring people up to speed, ages of your children now.
Ages of my children now are 19, 24, and 25.
Yeah. Okay. Because, normally, so normally in some quote
They're all
unquote,
behind me. They're always
yeah.
there.
Yeah. So normally, in some quote unquote interviews, you go through like the whole resume, right? You go through
Right,
I'm married, have this many children, this is what I do for the job, that sort of a thing. And
right,
I'm just like,
right,
let's some of those things will just come out as we go along. And I think
right.
that I believe it's important throughout the conversation to bring up things like that because it helps
Mhm.
to what I call fill in the gaps that many times if they're not if we as the people who have some sort of a platform or a presence on social media don't at some point occasionally take the time to fill in those gaps, people will fill in those gaps for us or really for themselves. So even as you mentioned that you will have folks who make the assumption that based on where you are now and then where maybe they first started following you. So say they started following you 6 months ago, what they have frame of reference to is what would that have been like, say, October of 2024. So they meet you in
Right.
October of 2024. And even though you scroll back, that's where they meet you up until March of 2025 when we're recording this. And so they then will go back and they'll fill in the gaps and fill in the blanks for themselves with, so I'm guessing probably lifelong athlete. I'm guessing just, I won't go with the extreme of like fell out the womb fit, but I'm just guessing has been, specifically weight training probably since they were in high school sort of thing. So that's why I do take a moment to do that. So let me actually ask you about that. Talk to me about your first experience doing structured weight or if you can remember like first memorable types experience with doing structured weight training, resistance training, strength training. What what was it that really got you to take that first step into the weight room? I mean, if it's related to that story you just told, cool. But talk to me a bit about that experience. What do you remember from that?
It wasn't related directly to that experience. That was more going to the gym and doing the classes and
Ah, okay.
the
So that's where you
classes being
started.
taught. That's where I started.
Okay.
Um, and then surrounding myself with, you know, there were a lot of kind of moms in my circle at the time that were actually more into running. So
Yep.
running became my choice exercise at the time. And so that definitely is another segment of my story moving forward where I take so much of my experience into my coaching with, wanting to empower and help women to possibly potentially not make the same mistakes I did, um, you know, in so many different ways. But the place that I came to with really finding strength training and its benefits it wasn't actually so much by choice
Mm,
as I was injured from running. Mile 6 of a half marathon and two almost blown out Achilles tendons just really stopped me in my tracks, and um, I had to find something different. That was part one of it. Once those healed and I did continue to run, um, it started to affect me hormonally. And as a
okay.
woman that was approaching her 40s, um, the long cardio with an I will repeat, I did not know what I didn't know. I was not at this time.
Yeah.
I did not have any kind of education. It was just, I was running. So I was over exercising because I was training for half marathons, and I wasn't putting on muscle because strength training at this time, I hadn't really integrated it, even though I had blown up my Achilles. Was doing other things, which kind of forced me to do other things, um, because it had now become more of a lifestyle for me of not being sedentary and doing more than just being a mom playing on the floor with my kids. And so when when I realized, I'll just say, the damage that I was doing. And I say damage because I could feel it in my body.
Yeah.
I just didn't have that life. I was overtraining and under eating, for lack of better description. And my body was rebelling back against me. And so that's when I had to make my body made a decision for me and said, you need to stop all of the cardio and do something different. So that was literally when I went into the weight room and I figured it out.
Hmm.
I had a great friend who owned the gym at the time and was really, don't be afraid to ask questions. Everyone is a beginner at some point, and so to get in there and started doing things, it took a while because anyone who is a past runner knows of the endorphin highs of, you know, that cardio high.
I cannot relate to getting the running high, but you
That's
go ahead. Yeah, I love that for you. You go right on ahead. Yeah.
crossing the finish line kind of endorphin high.
Yeah.
It is not initially replaced on the weight floor. And so that also I've taken with me into my coaching because so many women have come to me and they come to me because they're stuck typically.
Hmm.
And then they are so used to, I'm going to say, the really intense, and I'm going to throw a few phrases out, and it's not to, bash one against the other, but
Hey,
whether it's,
say it however you want to.
spin classes or Orange Theory or hit, and all of these circuits, and because the more you sweat, the better the workout was, like those, and they're going, but I'm not getting the results that I want. And so these are the conversations that I have with a lot of women, and those are the women that are coming to me. And so, uh, so
Let's
those are
see.
the things that are coming to me. Those women are coming to me, and it's where I draw my coaching um, from. And when you recognize that more isn't always better, so I'm very much doing it better is better. And so for me, it was letting go of that endorphin high, trusting the process. And that's been like years of learning and moving forward. So
Yeah. Okay. Man, see, there's so much to unpack there. And what I really appreciate about what you shared is really that progression and the transparency around where your beliefs were at that particular time and how those have really progressed and evolved over time. And I bring that up because it's pretty common for me to have a conversation or multiple conversations with someone, whether they're a current client, kind of more in the beginning ish stages. I'll say beginning ish stages could be anywhere from just getting started up until sometimes 6 months, or somebody who is maybe a potential new client. And underneath the work that we will do when it comes to the what I'm going to call the tactical pieces of things with, okay, let's figure out a training program, let's figure out a nutritional strategy, let's get an understanding of how to put some parameters around like how you protect your sleep and then how you handle recovery and low intensity movement. Underneath the layer of those strict, what I'll call tactical strategies, like those tangible things, underneath that lies a need in order to sustain whatever progress or results are going to come. There's an underlying need to have a shift in whatever the belief system is. And I reference like when I'm just kind of getting started with folks, like in the beginning stages, as just generally it can take up to 6 months, because I think that many times people have this belief that beginning stages is something like the first few weeks or even maybe the first 3 months. And that's just, I have not found that to be the case. I think, you and I have like partnered and worked together in programs before. And then also we've stayed in communication. I think we're pretty aligned on this belief that based on experience that this change is not overnight. And sometimes even I think using the phrase of this just doesn't happen overnight doesn't even tell the entire story, because I mean, when we say overnight, we're even talking about like it can take some people months, it can take some people years to truly, truly shift and understand. And the thing that really stuck out, one of the things that stuck out to me is when you talked about, particular injuries that you had and things like that. And then even with coming back from some of those injuries, most likely kind of went back to slowly doing some of the same things. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes, that I've been that person and sometimes continue to be that person in certain aspects where, sometimes it's not just like I just need to fall down once. Like I got to fall down a few times before I actually believe that, okay, I'm not really getting to like the root of what needs to actually shift here. So I think that's something that I wanted to draw out of what you just shared, that I think sometimes is not necessarily like readily understood by people all the time.
I've worked with some women for well over a year. And the one thing that I really, just because of, I do coach women that are in their, mid to late 20s, but then also 40 and beyond. A few women that are older than myself. And one thing that I think is really important to know when you're talking about timelines is some of these women and who are feeling lost and really like, I don't think there's hope for me anymore kind of place. When they finally have that um, awareness and recognition and the acceptance, I think it's the acceptance of recognizing that they have been spinning their wheels and dieting since they were 20 years old.
Mm.
So they have gone more than half their life. So let's say from 20 to 50, they've done every Atkins low carb, no carb. They have done all of the diets, following the 1,200 calorie or less protocol, just all of the things.
Yeah.
And when they've done all of the things that have, you know, that society kind of preached at, that was, the way to lose those last 10 pounds. I mean, these women, it is heartbreaking. They have been chasing this last 10 pounds, which then turns into 20 and 30 and 40 for the last 30 years. So when they come to the acceptance that they recognize that they have done this, and that's through lots of conversations and lots of love and lots of just gently moving forward. Um, they realize that this is a journey that they're on. It's not a quick fix. I'm not going to give you a 6 week template on how you're finally going to lose those last 20 pounds you've been chasing for 30 years. You're not going to
Yeah.
get that in 6, right? So it's why I tell them like you need to commit to this process and all of the ebbs and flows, because you cannot undo 30 years in even 30 weeks perhaps, like it is a process. And so that acceptance and that just recognition of it, and then going and then seeing the wins that aren't scale related, seeing those wins, that is the biggest game changer out there. And I think with the things I see, there's so many amazing influencers and coaches out there, and it's just ditch the scale, ditch the scale. You hear it all the time. I think that is finally becoming a little bit more prevalent in the messaging too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's okay. Anything before we shift into talking, kind of starting to get real specific around particular, as I referred to, like strategies, tactics, and we'll really start to uncover like the why behind some of the strategies and tactics. Anything else that you felt like was really pivotal in your own journey that you want to make sure you share? I'm sure some other things will come up as we're going, but is there anything else that really sticks out to you that maybe is like a this is something that people probably don't know, or when I tell people about this they're like, really, I never would have thought, as far as your own journey and progression in overall fitness, nutrition, that sort of thing. Just want to make sure I leave space for that before I transition here.
Hmm, that's good. There's a few moments, but the whole idea of, if you can't do it perfectly, not doing it at all, kind of a
Mm,
thing, a perfectionist mindset.
yeah.
um you know but when you say that people make assumptions on, because you see me here and you see me here and you see the things that I post, and so this must be exactly who you are, and this is how I've labeled you, or within the framework of who I believe you to be, or that kind of a thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I went away on 2 winter holidays this year to escape our Manitoba snow and cold.
Yeah.
And when people find out that I did not go into the gym once on my vacation, like, they don't want to believe me. And,
Mm,
you know, so that is always, because it's like, oh, never miss a Monday. You have to do this. And, commitment, commitment. I am committed, but I'm committed
yeah.
to so many different facets of my health
Yeah.
that, for me, I push hard and I train um, smarter, not harder, I guess. And
Mhm.
so going away for that week, it was taking in the walking. It was doing all of these other things that were just promoting wellness in my life. And then coming back from that, I felt stronger. I felt ready. I could go again. And so, but having going from an all or nothing mindset to having more of this lifestyle focused like mindset, it's also something that I love to bring to my clients because they don't feel that they don't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
They don't need to show up perfectly. They just need to show up. And so that is, I believe it's a huge component, a huge key to the success that the women are having as well, is recognizing that I don't have to do it perfectly to still feel great and to still see my have my clothes fitting better, and just the empowerment that that brings. That I think is a huge part of my own journey, letting
Yeah.
go of some of that stuff, realizing that, you know, I am not perfect, and I don't want to come across as being perfect, because then I believe it doesn't give others the freedom to be themselves as well.
Yeah. Very well. That's so well stated. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question and then we'll transition into talking about some more strategy-based stuff. So, I hear you talking about the what I'm going to paraphrase is that transition from progress, focusing on progress instead of perfection, focusing on the process versus being specific. It's got to be this specific outcome, or even all or nothing thinking, like moving from that sort of a mindset. And I believe that something that can be really helpful is an example that you can think about of where the all or nothing thinking was present for you and how that's different now. So, an example, perhaps, like I'll share one of my examples just as a just to kind of spitball here. So, I definitely can remember a time frame where I believed if I didn't, well, let me rewind. So, rest and recharge days were very difficult for me to take. I at that at a certain point in time, I was more along the lines of you take rest days, you take recharge days when you feel like you need them. So I, as far as I can remember, I can't recall having the mindset of, rest days are for weak people or anything like that. It was more of my body will tell me when it is time to rest. And until then I'm going to get up and go lift weights. Like that's just what you're supposed to do, right? And you take a rest day when you feel like you need it. So I had very much a belief that the the work the result that I was looking for, which was at that time building as much muscle as humanly possible, which I'm still fine with. But I wanted to focus on building muscle. So my belief was the more often that I train and train hard, but really the more often that I train, then the better results I'm going to get. And that the rest day was more of like a, yeah, I'll throw that in that if I feel like I need to, but otherwise, like the rest day, I didn't believe that anything was really happening on a rest day. And this is clearly, hopefully, prior to being certified and really understanding what was going on and doing, like I went through like self-teaching also prior to going through an actual certification. And so that's where I can give a specific example of a belief shift that I had, but an actual example of, hey, here's where I saw that belief really coming to fruit, like coming, like actually happening. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes when we talk about um, like all or nothing thinking, sometimes I believe that that message is out there so much now that people have difficulty really putting like a story to it or putting an example to it. So hopefully that
That's
kind of helps spur some thought a bit. So when you talk about, you know, now realizing like, yeah, I go or now I go on vacation and I don't feel like I have to do something or whatnot. I don't know if that's the example, or if you can think of something where, okay, here's a sign that like things have changed compared to what I used to do.
I one thing that pops into my mind was, you know, when I followed a really strict protocol, a running schedule. It was like a 12 or 16 week training. You knew which days you did a 3 miler and a 4 miler and a 6 miler, when your long runs were, like, they were on the calendar. And it didn't leave room for, I mean, I could move a Tuesday to a Wednesday, or I could do that kind of thing, but it didn't
Right.
leave room for missing something, and even, rest days. I can totally relate to you there. um because it does become a part of your identity. And so I think the all or nothing was, um and it often comes through comments from people just sometimes say just the darndest things. And you know so the all or nothing was a lot of things like, oh, you're Anita the runner, or you're Anita the, this is what, it was tied to my identity. And while that is a part of who I am, yes, I can run. I ran marathons, but I am not the runner. Like, I think when you shift your identity from, I'm not Anita the personal trainer or the coach. Like, I am a coach, it's what I do, but it's not all that I am. And so I think when you realize the layers of who I am as a woman, as a mom, as a friend, as a wife, as all of these things, you let go of the perfection that comes from weight training, or all of these things. And so it's given me that grace to not attach myself to that in the same way.
Oh,
um
nice.
that's a lot of kind of more inner work and that sort of thing. But recognizing that if I miss, let's say I've got the 5 workouts um, on the calendar because I schedule them in. I love doing a 5 day body part training split at the gym, and that's my
Yeah.
favorite. And if I miss one, it doesn't make me less than. And
Yeah.
really accepting and letting other women know that, just like the scale weight doesn't define you and all of these kinds of things, it that's where the all or nothing, it really is more of a mindset shift than anything else. Just like accepting rest days are actually important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't I know it? Yeah. When I came, and I appreciate you being able to share your point of view on that progression again, because I do think that a good portion of the inspiration that I have for help me understand whether I'm talking about something fitness adjacent or not is to be able to provide a specific example of where the change where the change is apparent to the person. So I think that's huge for people to connect to. So I appreciate that. And yes, once I got an understanding for how muscle actually grows, and understanding the recovery and repair process being part of part of that, like you can't keep just pouring water on a flower or a seed yet, or a plant. You can't just keep water. Eventually you oversaturate. Like, you might need to let the water settle. You might need to
Right,
let it
need
get some
to refill.
sunlight. Right. And that's, I don't know if that's going to be an analogy that connects with somebody, but hey, it worked
Yeah, it's
for
a good
me.
one.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's
All
a good
right.
one.
So let's shift a little bit here as we talk about coaching. So I know, based on previous conversations that we've had, that you're really good at working with a number of different types of psychographics. And from my perspective alone, something that you do really well is being able to try to clear out a lot of the noise when a client first comes to you. And when I say clear out the noise, what I'm talking about is all of the different messages that they have coming their way, whether they're voluntary or involuntary, about you need to get in X amount of grams of protein per pound of body weight. You need to get in 10,000 steps. You need to drink half of your body weight in ounces of water per day. You need to also make sure that you're getting in a multivitamin every day. I'm going to need you to get 8 hours of sleep. I need you to start your morning with gratitude. I need you to end the night with no screens. And also, the room must be at a certain temperature. I also need to make sure you get my point. Okay. So, when there are so many different, those are all great suggestions, by the way. Like, I was actually just kind of going down a list of like, oh, these are all pretty solid.
Overwhelmed already.
Yeah. Yeah. So, while I don't necessarily think anything is wrong with any of those suggestions, because they're all actually pretty solid, right? Where the challenge, yeah, where the challenge comes into play is figuring out where to even start. So when you have, and it doesn't have to be like a specific client, just let's start like kind of wide scope. Somebody is coming to you and they have no idea where to start, what to do. All they know or believe at this particular point are two things. One, something has to change. I have to change. And for whatever reason, like something has to change. And the second belief is that you are the person that can help them do that. Those are the only two things that they really know or believe at that point. Where do you even start with that particular person?
So this is all very real and has happened a few times in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think women specifically feel incredibly paralyzed with all of the noise on social media and with that list that you just so
just
shared with us.
word vomited. Yeah.
And this is why we are paralyzed because, I see here is your protocol to lose 10 pounds by summer.
Mhm.
Like, and that's great. That's speaking to exactly what they want. They want to lose 10 pounds, but now you're going to be, I'll add to your list of you need so many zone 2 cardio sessions as well on top of your 10,000
Oh,
steps.
yeah. Yep. Need that too.
And there is language in here that is isn't even recognizable. It's like zone what? Right? Like there's so many things. And so um there's there's a few different approaches, and some women have tracked food before, and if they've tracked food before, I'm like, okay, track your food for me for a couple of weeks. Like I want to see where you're at. I want to meet you where you're at. um
Okay.
do you have, do you track your steps? Well, no, I don't. Oh, but I have an old Fitbit. I'm gonna go, I had someone, she went and charged it up, put it on, and I said, let's see where you're at. Like, I just want to see where you're at. What are you currently doing? Why do you feel stuck? What is keeping you stuck? And then let's slowly work from there. There is no band aid solution. And that's the most unique part and most rewarding part of my job is that, like, there's no one size cookie cutter. You need to do these things. Like, if you came to me and told me that right now your job is like you're super sedentary because you're sitting behind the microphone all day and you're not
Yeah.
walking,
Yep.
steps are, you're maybe at 3,500 when you started tracking for me. The last thing that we would do is jump you up and say, well, if you want to lose those 10 pounds, you got to go 10 to 12,000. Like that's like baseline. You have to do that to lose weight. That it's overwhelming, it's paralyzing, and it causes people to gung ho start the first 2 days and then they're gone. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of, which is why also it's really hard to, you need to work with someone long enough because those first few weeks are uncovering the layers of where you've been, because where you've been and where he's been and where she's been are at such different places that you want to slowly start habit stacking, creating some sort of ripple effect. One thing I did jot down was, when women are paralyzed and they have this social media overload and all they hear is, you just have to start. because I know I put it out there. I'm like, you don't have to wait till Monday to start again. Like
Right.
today is it Wednesday?
Today is Tuesday. Tuesday. Yeah, yeah,
Um, you could actually start this afternoon. Like you don't, but then they're like, okay, just start. Start with what? Right?
right.
Start with what? What am I supposed to start with? And so that's where we find the the low hanging fruit, the things that are the most, what can you do today? And I don't expect you to walk 10,000 steps. I don't even expect you to walk 5,000 steps if you've really not been walking a lot at all. And so it might be, can you walk for 10 minutes after lunch or on your lunch break at work? Can you walk for 10 minutes and then when you get home after work, like you might start pairing those things together. And then suddenly the cumulative effect of that felt so good
Yeah.
continues. Now that you've started walking, you are actually drinking more water. And these things start to, snowball into
Yeah.
something really incredible. There's one gal, we're still working through body weight workouts because we've gone from zero, right? And so to
Hmm.
do two body weight workouts that are only about 15-20 minutes are really doable. It gives you the check off the box kind of a thing, and
Yep.
we all like being able to check off the box.
Oh, absolutely.
When it's manageable and sustainable lifestyle habits, I will never promise that you're going to get to where you want to be in those 6 weeks, because I'm not going to give you a checklist this long when we start. By the end, you might have created that your own checklist for yourself because you're like, these are the things I need to do. And women are recognizing the embracing that journey of getting there and then seeing how I can actually do this, and the belief in themselves. It's like, it isn't as hard as I thought, because it wasn't like, we didn't bite off more than we could chew to begin.
Yeah.
And so, one other example I'll just give with that is that, I always talk about water from the get-go, because to me, water, I mean, it's just probably the best habit you could have as far as your health and wellness. And it's also something that, I always say, control the controllables. They're like, well, I'm out of town this week, I can't. You can control your water. Like, I don't go anywhere without my water bottle. It's,
Yeah.
even if I'm at a hotel, it's on my bedside table. Like, we have strategies and ways to make that work. Hotels have
Hmm.
gyms, you fill your water, like all the things, right? But not everybody actually likes drinking water as much as Coach Anita does. And so even that is something that we work through. And it's not about, you need to drink half your body weight in ounces of water on day one. But I really would like to see you starting your day with a glass of water before you go to the coffee pot. And sometimes that literally is something that is on their calendars for 2, 3, 4 weeks, because it's actually not that easy for everyone. And once you
Yeah.
start uncovering and unpeeling the layers, all of a sudden that few sips of water in the morning slowly translates to more. And wow, I actually feel better. I feel more energized. I don't feel as dehydrated. And then it ripples into other things. And
Yeah.
so it is just really taking each woman as an individual, seeing where their struggles are, and then meeting them where they're at, whether it's water, whether it's walking, whether it's like, I go to the gym, but I'm lost. Okay, let's give you a structured strength training program. Like,
Right.
because ultimately my goal is to have women lifting heavy weights and
Right.
eating high protein and all of these things, but it's not where we start.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
journey of, you know, 15 years, you know, I don't compare your chapter 1 with my chapter 15. Really, because it's taken me this long to get there, and hopefully I can get you there a little quicker, because we're going to bypass my mistakes and then go at it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very well said. And so I have an additional like perspective that I bring to the comparison piece that you talked about kind of near the end there. Where you talked about like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 15. And my generally like my wheelhouse tends to be the person who is on chapter 15, and believes that they should either look and or feel better based on the amount of work that they've been putting in over number of months, number of years, or anywhere in between. I don't think there's anything in between months and years, but you know what I mean? Like I generally like my psychographic tends to be the person who's like, I've been doing this for a while and I don't understand why I don't look better than I think I should, or I don't feel better than I think I should. And I've started or a while back, I started adopting like, well, you can't compare your chapter 50. I always say 20. I don't know why. I'm always like, you can't compare your chapter 20 to somebody else's chapter 20. We all read differently. We comprehend differently. I was thinking about this recently with like, um, my son and I both read a particular article and we had two completely different takeaways from like this online article. You can think about two people who are sitting in a room listening to the same presentation and have two completely different takeaways. So I think I appreciate that you bring that up, just because I think also getting past that initial step of getting started, or that first phase, is tough. I think what then becomes the next stage of tough is continuing to keep going and managing expectations. So I want to ask you about that. And we've got just a few minutes left here.
Mhm.
How how do you work to manage the expectations when someone has been at it for whatever length of time? So, you know, they get started with you and they're all in. They're like, "Listen, I get it. Like I'm going to be a little frustrated at first, but I do understand baby steps. Change doesn't happen overnight. I've got to be consistent," like that sort of a thing. How do you manage expectations along the way when you have that person who says, "Listen, I I believed you when you said it wasn't going to happen overnight. So I didn't expect necessarily to, you know, all of a sudden have everything change within the first month. However, I'm expecting like after 6 weeks or 7 weeks that, like, why isn't this cemented yet?" Like how do you handle that, those sorts of managing those
That's a great
expectations?
and that's a tough one. Um, but usually it comes down to, I mean, hopping on a call and some self reflection on how much have they really, they've shown up consistently, but what did that look like? And because we
Mhm.
all know that in over the span of 7, 12, 15 weeks, there's life happens and there's things different.
Life be life, and yep.
Life it, lots of it. And so with the women that I work with specifically, I've been very blessed and fortunate. Um, they are so transparent with me, and the we have built most of my clients I've been with, you know, lots of renewals, I'll say, just as far as the span of us being together has given us the opportunity to really build relationships. So they recognize the ebbs and flows, I mean, especially with the women that are 40 plus, and they recognize the roles that their hormones are playing, and just the season of life that they're in. And so um even though the results aren't they're not, they recognize that they're not linear, and so they continue to show up knowing that there is something better. I do um I try my darndest to practice what I preach and to continue to show up as my best self so that they can see what is possible many, many chapters down the road by consistently showing up, even albeit not
Mm,
perfectly. And
mhm.
so I I share my stories. I really want to encourage them through my own example and the way that I work with them, the conversations that we have, and just really. it's mindset focused, and having them believe that there is, what are you going to achieve when you quit? You will never ever
Ooh.
know what is possible for you if you throw in the towel now, like really, and then we often go back to that conversation. You didn't get here in 7 weeks. You have been struggling for 7-ish years. Now,
Right.
7 weeks later, you just think that it didn't happen soon
Yeah.
enough, And so I've been called the tough love coach. I've been, but it's the relationship and the living through example. It's the hard conversations. It's having them take a good look inwardly to see what are they actually, you know, um, doing. Actually, I did jot down one other thing. When we do have these conversations, people often underestimate, say how much they eat, but they overestimate how much they're working. So you take these looks, and then we look at food diaries, and we look at just all of the different components, because it's not just, like I said, it's not this cookie cutter approach. So it really depends
Yeah.
on the person, their age, like their season of life, and then um, just really being open, and when there's a trust factor, then keeping them encouraged to move forward, to stay in it for the course is, I'll say, less daunting anyway.
Yeah.
Have their best interests at heart, and they want what's best for themselves too. So
Right.
they know that quitting isn't going to get them there faster than if they just stay on this maybe slow rolling um yeah
Right. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate you taking the time to share that. And I'm going to wrap up in just a couple of minutes here, like literally. I think that that's so important. Those pieces that you brought up with getting a kind of a reality check on, okay, well, let's go back and let's recalibrate the expectations, and let's look at the effort. And I think sometimes that can be triggering to people to hear it phrased like that. So give me like 10 seconds to explain it. So I think that it's easy for someone to assume that that means that, okay, what we're actually going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to be like, well, I don't know why you expect to see results when you haven't been doing this, you haven't been doing this, you haven't been doing this. No, that's not the case at all. What it is let's go back and get an understanding of what have we been consistent with, and what is or was the expectation. And I think that sometimes the level of effort that someone is putting in will have them subconsciously increase the level of what they think that outcome or that expectation should be, because they've been putting in more effort than they were before. And so because they're putting more effort than they were before, which may have been like in a case that you're talking about, maybe it was not a whole lot with consistency. And now they're like, well, I'm being a little bit more consistent, but I don't expect that my results are going to be a little bit better. I expect that because I'm putting in a little bit more consistency than I was before, or a little bit more effort, that now I'm going to have like immensely faster results. And so that's where sometimes I see the it's not the disparity, the inequality. It just doesn't equal out. So I'm like, hey, these are the conversations that I have where I'm like, listen, it is a methodical approach, and this is typically why people then veer off and go try to find something different that's going to quote unquote get them there faster. And then they find themselves a year later going back to try and get themselves faster there again, because they completely fell off the thing. Like I just had a interaction with a guy yesterday who was talking about a particular, like basically this dude, and I share this. I'll keep his information confidential, but we're talking, and he's like, yeah, he's at about 275. I want to say, like, yeah, around like 275. And so he decided that what he's going to do is he's going to run about a 1,000 calorie deficit from where he thinks he is. So he wants to set his calories at 2,000 calories, and he weighs 270 pounds. And he feels like that's going to work. And then also do like a fasting protocol every week and a half, like a full day fast every week and a half, and whatnot. And I was like, okay, well, where'd that come from? And he said, well, I did it about a year ago and it worked great. And so my question was, then why are we talking if that worked great? Like, then why are what what am I here for? And he's like, well, I just wanted to kind of get your take on it. I'm like, well, it didn't work, because if it worked, you wouldn't be now looking for something
Right.
completely, you know what I mean? So again, and I understand that for some people that may be kind of triggering, and you know, I try to be very transparent in helping people just to kind of understand the different perspectives that are out there, because I think that many times there's so many conversations that are more around like, well, I got to say the right thing so that I bring in the right person and whatnot. It's like, well, sometimes it's about being just transparent with people and
Mhm.
just explaining, hey, here's what's going on and here's why, and let's work together on finding this out. And I think that's what I want to wrap with. Like, I really appreciate the level of attention that you put into each and every person, because it is like, you're definitely, from my perspective, somebody who really thrives on like that connection with the client and being able to walk them through, and they feel like they've got somebody like right in there with them, versus like the occasional like, oh, hey, uh doing all right, okay, well, didn't hit your water, make sure you hit your water, talk to you
Right.
later, like that sort of a thing. So I really appreciate that, because I've gotten to see that kind of firsthand, and I think that's cool. Okay, well, anything else? We could go with a few other topics, but anything
We
else
can keep
that
going.
I may not have asked you about that you want to make sure that you share before we close things out here?
No, I really feel like my message is primarily in how I live my life. And it's why I show up on social media the way that I do. It's just to be I like people to know that if they need Anita, she's there. She shows up, she's consistent. If I have a question, she's going to answer me relatively promptly. Um, and in showing up the way that I do, my goal is just to work with women to free them from this perfectionist mindset trap and recognize that this truly can be a lifestyle. You can take this lifestyle to a birthday party, you can have your cake, it's not bad or good. Just really loving to dispel some of the myths that are out there and allow women just to recognize that, first of all, your worth isn't in the number on a scale, or all of these things, and then empowering them as they go forward, take up space in the gym, on the weight room floor, and giving them the tools they need to just thrive and live their best life. That is my ultimate goal for women, especially women as we age, because it's where I'm at, and so I hope to be a role model, on that field, in that field, on that floor.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I appreciate you truly for taking the time to be able to do this. I do know that there are going to be people who will want to connect with you. So, if that is the case, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
You know, Anita Fehr _fitness on Instagram is probably the best place to find me. You can message me. I'm quick to answer there. Anita Fehr on Facebook as well. Um, or you can, is there a way to comment here to ask questions? Or
I'll have them. I'll have them send it directly to you, because I don't sometimes. Yeah, there is a way to, yeah, there's a way to comment on Spotify and on YouTube. However, yeah, they can. I'll make sure that your link is in the show notes. Yeah, I don't like to overcommit on stuff, so either put the link. Yeah,
excellent.
yeah, the link to connect with Anita will be in the show notes. And yeah, again, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to walk through some of the context in not only your own journey, really. My big hope, which was fulfilled with this, was to help people understand more about you as a coach and how your background informs what you do as a coach, and understanding that there's more than just, like you said, Anita the coach, like Anita the runner. So there's real life experience. And again, that quote that I will just continue to always reference back to is, where you meet people is not always, or what you think when you first meet someone is not always indicative of what they've actually experienced. And so being able to have conversations like these where we can purposely fill in the gaps so that people understand, like, oh, okay, so there is a relatability factor with this certain thing that I'm going through, or this thing that I'm thinking, or this particular mindset, or this particular belief that I've got. Like, those are the things that I think more and more, that's how people start to really be able to suss out, like, who's for real in this industry. Just because I just have a belief that's becoming tougher and tougher for the average just consumer to figure out, or the average client. So, all right. So with that, folks, we are going to close out today's episode. So if you have listened this long, thank you. I truly, truly appreciate it. If you could just do me one favor, hop on to whatever platform you're listening to this on right now and leave a rating and or review, whichever it allows you to do. If it lets you do both, might as well just do both because you're already here. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.